So hopefully we get this. Okay, one more time for the recording. Hello, I am Boris Mann, your host for today. We've been doing a handful of these tech talks, which is an excuse for the App Proto and Blue Sky community to get together and talk about what they're building, demoing with each other. Um, Feel free to use the chat for questions. Use hand protocol. I'll ask each presenter if they would like people to hold questions or have them along the way, and then we usually have time for a little discussion at the end. Next week, not announced with a post yet, but will be Rudy talking about Black Sky, R Sky, and a bunch of the other things that he's working on. November 21st, Trezi and the games industry labeler. For those who haven't heard about that, they're running their own Ozone instance and basically doing a light bit of verification for different games industry accounts, which is super cool. Chad is on the call. Chad, you want to give a wave? Uh, Chad is also here in Vancouver, and he is helping me out because he is bilingual in Japanese. And we are going to do a late November, early December talk with the White Wind developer, and we'll put that at a Japanese-friendly time slot, which will be, Chad, I think probably late afternoon Pacific.
Something like that. We'll see. We'll have to also figure out with him as well what works
What
for him.
works?
So
Yeah, exactly. And today, builders of app protocol. So we do end up having three little demos and talks. Haley ended up having a conflict and not being able to present today. So we're going to miss her. But we have Samuel, Austin, and Puria. And Samuel, do you mind going first?
Sure thing.
Okay. Um,
Uh, just figure out how to share. Cool. Is that working?
it is. And do you want people to ask questions along the way, or do you want to talk first and take questions at the end?
Why don't we talk first and then take questions at the end?
Okay, awesome.
Anyway, I guess I'll be talking about my blog today. Um, it's quite simple, but I just thought I'd talk through how it works. Um, just in terms of looking at it, it's just a blog. Doesn't really do anything too far out of the ordinary, but it's what's marked, Markdown is just a blog. Um, I think what's interesting about it is how it fits into the app protocol network. So I made this diagram. You might have seen a thread on it that I made a few days ago. And it's basically a diagram for how app protocol works, right? Um, app protocol at its heart is about the data. Data sits independently in repositories, um, and how apps sit on top of that is that they collect data from all across the network and then kind of distill it down into an app specific view of the network from which then kind of becomes like something that makes sense. So for example, Blue Sky, it collects all Blue Sky related data on the network, condenses it down into this view of it, and then produces a normal looking app. Um, what we can do to make the blog is we can reuse the data layer to host any sort of data, in my case, a blog. Um, However, what's nice about this is it makes the network architecture a hell of a lot simpler because unlike Blue Sky data, which is you will often be referencing other people's data on the network. For example, when you like a post, that is a reference to another person's data. Blogs don't typically have that sort of data, so we can skip most of this complicated architecture and just go straight for the data. So this is basically how my blog tool works. Um, I use the Whitewind blog lexicon, which, if you are not aware of that, it's a blog. It's a blogging site. It's how I can, when I want to write a post, I do it through Whitewind, and it's just a Markdown renderer. And when you save it, it puts in your personal data server as a record with just the Markdown text in there. Um, we can use we can go to, once you've done that, you can go to your PDS and you can ask for that data back, right? So that's what this kind of blogging application does. It goes to my PDS. It says, please give me all of the blog type data on the PDS, fetches it, and brings it back down. The Next.js front end, like Next.js is what it is very good at. It's very good at caching. So basically, um, when you click on blog post, it's basically the record key is the identifies it, and it kind of goes to the PDS. It says, "Can I have the record associated with this?" And then it kind of caches that data as a nicely rendered Markdown document. That's pretty much it. Yeah. I guess
I'm actually gonna make you do a bit at the end, which is Samuel, who are you?
Oh,
Where
I
are
skipped
you?
that part. Kind of dived into it, didn't I? Um, I mean, I would do that now. I'm Samuel. Sorry, I work with this guy. And I am in London currently.
Amazing. Thank you. Ezra.
Yeah. So I have a question. I don't know if this is yeah, but it would it help at all um in your application to have, like, in the architecture at all, if the relay was able to pull all of the data from all of these PDSs, including Whitewind, and then Whitewind would be putting all of its data into the relay, and then the relay would be able to service connections only, like, you could request what kinds of lexicons you want from the relay, and then you could subscribe to the relay with for only those lexicons, instead of have so that way every person who wants to subscribe to the um, Whitewind's uh, data wouldn't have to go straight to the PDS. They would be able to go through the relay. Is that something that would help? Is that something that is not really
Yes.
would not
So,
do
well,
because
this is Jetstream, basically.
oh okay.
Jazz wrote this tool called Jetstream, which effectively ingests the relay, converts it to a much nicer JSON format rather than the kind of like strange CBOR wire format. It converts it to JSON and allows you to filter by lexicon and also filter by DID. So if there's something you're looking for, that's Jetstream is the tool for you. The problem with so this my blog has a problem effectively, and that is when you change your blog post, there's no way to tell it that it's changed. And so what I want to do at some point is have some sort of way to say, hey, this record's updated, go and fetch it again, or something like that. This is a missing piece. I don't really have a good answer now, just purely because Next.js is not good at receiving webhooks. Sorry, receiving WebSocket connections. Yeah, I'm Whitewind.com itself, you can see everyone's blog posts show up, so they will be connecting to the relay and listening to for all Whitewind records. Yeah. But the thing is, for a single person blog, you don't need other people's records. So you can just go directly to your own PDS.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you check out the code, which is open source and the links are in there, you know, Samuel wrote it for himself. It's not like super templated yet. I found when I was working in, I got it running, and you have to like look up your own PDS host and fill in some dids and some things like that. But like that took like 5 minutes. The longest part for me setting up and running it locally was replacing the favicon of Samuel's face with my own. Vriska, sorry,
Right,
you had your
sorry.
hand up. Go for it. Unmute and ask your question.
Okay, hopefully my mic is working. All right, so one thing is like I think I think the only thing you would want like a blog to link to other people's records for is if you're like replying to someone else's blog post. Would
Mhm.
that be like a super difficult thing to add to your system, or would that be like really easy if you wanted to link to someone else's?
Um, so yeah, that's a good question. I believe that uh, Whitewind supports comments. If I just click on a post, let's see if it works. Yeah. Um, yeah, you totally could do this. So this is similar to the problem I described earlier, where ingesting data into Next.js is quite difficult because it's serverless architecture and they can't receive webhooks. Um, However, if you did want to do comments, you would have to be, yeah, listening to the relay. It does boost the complexity quite a bit, but about as, it's gone from a markdown renderer to a little an actual proper app. So yeah, but anyway, very possible. It's kind of what it's built for. Does that answer your question?
Raphael.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, yeah, so I asked on the chat, is there a way to import from an existing blog? Well, I could just copy over, but I'm thinking more about like the publication dates and so on.
No, I mean, a tool doesn't exist yet. I can't imagine it'd be very difficult to write such a tool. Um, that's probably something I should think about. That would be a good tool to have. But no, I don't have an existing blog, so I wrote my post from scratch.
Okay,
Um,
and can you like is the publication date the current date or can you set it like from past date?
So that's a funny thing about the Blue Sky as a whole. Basically, records self-declare when they were created, and then um, let's talk about Blue Sky specifically. Blue Sky posts self-declare when they were created, and then when they come to the app view, the first time the app view sees the record, it adds an index that date. So it's like the date when it says it was made and the date when we first saw it. Usually it's the same, but sometimes it's like different. So for example, if you're backporting a Twitter archive or there's a PDS somewhere else on the network that then connects for the first time, is when those might mismatch. Um, in the case of a blog post, uh, you can just because you're writing all the content, it's not someone else's content, you can absolutely trust the creator that date. You don't need to worry about malicious behavior here. So yeah, you would just set the creator date to whatever you want it to be. So like kind of backporting your blog would be totally possible.
Okay, so Whitewind has the interface for that.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I would have to check, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can check. Thank you.
Dan.
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious because you could otherwise these are markdown posts. They could just be in the repository like you would normally do, put it in the folder with markdown posts. Uh, so aside from being fun to put it on the PDS and put it on ATProto, and it shows up on the Whitewind site, right? Because they sort of scrape all Whitewind lexicon blog posts. But are there any other advantages of this structure, putting it there?
No.
Just
I would
gets
say
the drill.
that having having the markdown files in your Git repo is probably more sensible and more easy. But it is nice that it shows up in the Whitewin site, and it is cool that you can collate these blog posts across the network. I think it's interesting. It's definitely not simplest, and it's not meaningfully better. It is more fun though.
Right. Agreed.
I, I think one of the patterns that we can see here, if like a lot of this, I wanted to bring on people literally just tinkering and doing fun stuff because that's what a lot of us developers are doing. I've followed this pattern, which effectively is headless CMS. So all of a sudden we can see the entire ATProto store as a headless CMS with typed data. And if you start thinking
Yeah.
in that direction and the different ways that you can display it, right? I use Samuel's thing, followed this pattern, and I was like, oh, I don't want this Next.js stuff in here. So I may go back to 11D, which I use to do a headless CMS with Ghost. So really nice editing experience, but I didn't want to run an entire database. And so you can use 11D to use the API to bake those things into a static site, or expose it as a phone tree, or feed it to an AI, or. That's the interesting thing about the headless CMS pattern in this case.
Yeah, sort
Yeah,
of.
and if I could,
Go ahead, Nick.
Very related to that, a long time ago, I worked at Six Apart and was part of Movable Type and LiveJournal. And back in the early blog days, Atom RSS were really interesting technologies that are obviously here today and serve their uses. And there was also this interesting shift to have like a uniform client interface, and there was a lot of XML RPC and things like webping that existed to allow blogs to notify other blogs when you mention them or interact with them, leave comments, etc. And this, like having everything here in the PDS, not only serves the whole purpose of, web mention, not only serves the purpose of providing the data portability and identity aspect, which are, like, I think crucial to content publication, especially in the modern age, but also it creates a normalized client. Anyone can take a tool, and as long as they're conforming to the lexicon, they can publish records, they can have their own client interface, as Boris was saying a second ago, with the whole headless CMS concept, and they can interact with it, but also systems can interact with each other. And when you take that layer and then add on the ability to add moderation to some extent through labeling, as well as feeds, it creates sort of a very level playing ground technology-wise for people to build their own tooling for whatever need that they have. And I think there's a lot of value there.
yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. I think the kind of having it in the AppProto ecosystem, like, Blue Sky as an application is like the very extreme of a, it's microblogging. It's extremely kind of interactive and social blogging. And so if you want to layer those experiences into your own kind of personal macro blog, there's a super easy path to do so. I also would say that like keeping your data in your personal data server is it's kind of novel. It's basically a key value store that you kind of carry with you, and you're likely to carry with you for a long time. Your blog posts won't disappear when you accidentally, lose, forget where you put your Git repo. I think that's a very nice. If you assume that your PDS is sticky around, then I think that's it's cool to keep stuff persistently like that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was just thinking if like this is a lexicon or a format that Whitewin people came up with, right? And it makes sense for blog posts. If that was like standardized or agreed upon, that could basically take the place of RSS too, right? If I had some RSS reader and I plugged in, I want to follow these blogs, and it could pull down the full blog post, not just whatever excerpts is in an RSS feed, right?
Yeah. I did add RSS support to my blog, I think. If I
Yeah.
remember correctly. Wait, how did I get it working? Maybe I didn't. RSS? Yeah, I did. Okay. Anyway, this is effectively similar. And if you wanted to run a, you could imagine a version of RSS where global search is possible effectively. Um,
Oh, I mean, I think the interesting thing here is, or we just make a client at Proto Reader that speaks multiple lexicons.
yeah.
Like RSS, this is in some ways a modern era that you could do similar things, but that gets down to application layer. There was one more question from Rudy, who is, I think, just a quick question saying, asking if the read time is from Whitewind, or is that something you did, Samuel?
Um, oh no, there's an npm package which guesses how long something takes to read based on how big the string is. So that's I can't remember what it's called. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, it's just an npm package. It's not Whitewind.
Amazing. So thank you very much, Samuel. Applause.
Thank you. Thanks.
And we've got links and to his blog and a bunch of other things on the site, and we'll make sure that you have them so you can check out the source code and replace his favicon face with yours if you want to try it out. Next up is Austin. Go ahead, Samuel.
Sorry. Alice forked it and made it a bit more of a template. I don't know if we can get a link there as well. That's nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Austin.
Yes.
You're up
Hi,
next.
hello.
Let me
go ahead and share my screen. All right. Greetings, everybody. I am Austin, aparker.io on ATProto, @proto. Is this an @proto space and not an ATproto space? My day job is not decentralized systems at all. I'm director of open source at a company called honeycomb.io, which some of you may have heard of, and I am on the governance committee for the Open Telemetry project, which is an observability framework. But I got invited to Blue Sky pretty in the big April 2023 tranche, I guess, and was smitten. And I have been really, I feel like there's just a ton of interesting potential for this. And since then, I've been hacking on it and trying to kind of do stuff. And so one of those stuffs was converting my WordPress blog into a @proto application. So this is not done by any means. It's not done enough for me to actually migrate yet, although, I'm hopeful that by the end of the year I'll have some time to sit down and kind of fix the problems. Um, I think similar to Samuel will I'll go through some stuff and then we can do questions at the end. So yeah, spiritually very similar. There's a few things that I really wanted to do and wanted to explore when I was making this that differ though. One, this is using Whitewind lexicons for now. So these posts are all up. The actual PDS for this is my self-hosted PDS, um, which I'll show you here in a second. But a couple of interesting things. So one is that you'll notice up in the corner here we have, like, retweet, and then this little comment thing. So how I've done this is when I'm creating posts, I'm actually creating two records. I'm creating the Whitewind lexicon record in my PDS, but I'm also creating a Blue Sky post record. And I can then take this and I can say, I can add a comment here, I can repost this, I can like this. And then when I go back, if I refresh, I see that I have that comment there, right? I'm kind of spiritually extending the Blue Sky comment or Blue Sky posts into a live comment section. And there's a few people that have done various implementations of this. Um,
I make this easy by using the same R key for both. Well, easy. Um, but if I go over to get posts, here's where I'm getting my record, turning that into a view. Where am I creating the post at? This, I have not actively worked on this in like a couple of months, so my memory is hazy. Yeah, so I'm actually sharing the same R key, record key between the Blue Sky post and the White One post. One, so I can derive everything from the same post. The other thing you might notice is that um, the URL is not record key. It is the actual slug it's a slug. So this is done with some Redis magic in there's this slugify function that is converting ATURIs into friendlier ones. And because of fun pre doing server-side rendering, then these actually get indexed as the full URL and the links to the full URL work. There's actually Redis is in the mix here to kind of store the mappings between the R key and the other thing. So Redis is also being used as a cache for the data. I'm using Remix, but if you were using something like Next or some other front-end framework that had better caching, inline caching things, you could do that instead. What else is different here? Not a lot actually. Like these are still Whitewind lexicons. So if you go and look at Whitewind, you can find all of these original posts. There's a few things that don't work really well. Images, one of them. So I'm been trying to figure out an easy way to like these blobs all work. I've been trying to figure out an easy way to modularize like putting a proxy in front of these so that I'm not doing get blob requests. I'm not even sure if it's worth it, but as I commented in the chat, PDS as the home, store of application state, I think it's neat. Um, yeah, these are all originally in WordPress, so I exported them. I have a little migration script. I think my hope for this is to get it to the point that this could almost be like a WordPress-esque sort of experience. One other thing is that um, I forgot my password, so I can't show it to you, but like there's an actual admin interface that lets you write posts in Markdown and then post them from the web interface. So it's a little more than just like a headless CMS. Uh, if you want to look at the code in all of its glory, it's on my GitHub. A Parker IO. And yeah, shout out to Haley because I cribbed a lot off of her work for this. So
The infamous blug.
yes, this is very much inspired by Blug. But yeah, I guess questions. Let me pull up the chat because I had it closed.
We are, if you guys can actually copy down that Zoom link because somehow this is switched into a non-paid meeting again. I don't know why, but I don't want to troubleshoot that here. So we'll ask some questions and then we'll need to switch out and come back in for Poirier at the end. Vriska, go ahead, ask your question.
So, from what I'm seeing, do you think it would be useful to have like a overarching like sidebar lexicon of like this record of like for like what all you're doing with like one single record that is both a app.bsky.post post, I think what it is, or
Yes.
and like a com.whitewind.entry, I think is what their lexicon's called.
Yeah,
But like where
I would
it's
love polymorphic records.
like just like a way to like say these are actually the same thing, do not separate. And like
I have no clue how I am also not a Blue Sky engineer. I'm not an ATProtocol engineer. I would love polymorphic records or nested records. Um, just because I don't know if that would that feels like it would have a lot of implications at the relay level, and also at the sign like and then also in the way that things are signed because you would have to like split the record up and like, what does it look like? What does a batched record look like in terms of signatures even? I have no clue, but I think it'd be nice. I also think it'd be nice, like someone kind of said before, I would like for some of these like primitive record types to maybe either move like upstream. Um, like maybe there should be a more of an inheritance system, which like that kind of is with the way lexicon works and unions being open unions, but maybe there should be, instead of I publish a com dot whatever dot whitewind dot blog, maybe there should be some sort of schema like this is a blog, this is a record or this is a content record of some sort, right? And then consumers can like both extend that and infer stuff from that. I also understand why that wouldn't be the design choice because that makes it a lot more complicated for consumers. But um, yeah, I do think the ability to like either nest records or have a record that was appeared as different things depending on what you were looking at it in would be very useful.
yeah, I think especially if we want to do like backwards compatible stuff, like if someone wanted to add on to the com.whitewind.blog.entry lexicon and add like tags or something else, it'd be easier to like not have to duplicate the same po record for
Yeah.
every version that you want to support.
So specifically, like one of the reasons that I wanted, like one of the things that is pushing me towards like making my own lexicon here is actually specifically that, right? It's being able to one, nest the comment root in it so I can have a strong ref or I can have a strong ref to the Blue Sky post so I don't have to make the X so I don't have to so that I don't have to have that R key synchronization, but also so that I can add labels and extend it and do categories and other like WordPressy sort of things, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's all I got for right now, so I'm gonna lower my hand and turn off my mic. Thank you for your answer.
Go
No
for it.
problem.
Go for it, Nick.
Yeah, so there have been a couple of conversations at other talks and on the internets about how inheritance would work, and I don't think inheritance is a good idea. I think what we should do is more apply like a trait model where we could
Mm.
say, hey, here is a displayable text post, and the very minimum content needed for that is a text blob and a created at. And if you know how to, if some record conforms to this trait, then it can be displayed in whatever app wants to implement like the displayable trait, so to speak. And then uh, additionally, the concept of mixins or complementary things, where you can have developers basically say, I'm going to create a sub record element or a separate def that overrides whatever this other thing has. So if you wanted to say this is my superseded tags structure for that implies a true taxonomy, not just a folksonomy that you describe and define, as long as it implements the trait of category like folder structure or tree or folksonomy, then you can display that with some amount of consistency. So I think it's a really interesting idea, and we're about to run out in 3 seconds. So that's it.
Yeah. I read yeah, to pick back up, we were talking about traits and inheritance and stuff, but I like traits as a lot. One thing I've been struggling with is like I read Paul Frazie's posts a while ago about like why, why is the content field in Blue Sky like done the way it is, right? Like why are there facets and not just like arbitrary markdown and yeah, being able to say like, oh, here is a strongly typed, trait for what this specific set of code, graphemes is really good. Like that's a lot better actually than Markdown, where it's all what does the client decide to do? Who the knows? And you can't give the client any hints about those interpretations. This is something that we struggle with. I mean, like speaking, professionally, like in OpenTelemetry, we struggle a lot with this because a big part of what OpenTelemetry is about providing semantic and structural guidance to consumers about what exactly does this metric measurement mean. And so that's why at a structure level we have, up, down, counter, monotonic. We have various ways that you can it's not traits, it's actually like it's a little more lower level than that. But we specifically say like, hey, this counter is different than that counter because this is an up down counter and that is a, not an up down counter. So consumers should know that I can't do certain types of math on these values because of this structural thing. And traits don't necessarily fix that because you can always ignore traits. However, if you're a consumer, you can do whatever the fuck you want in the first place. So it's maybe a bit academic. But yeah, I think like how do I, the problem is it's really hard to do it that way. Like it's a lot easier from a user perspective to just be able to say like, oh, here's some markdown. Display it however you want. I don't care. And then building all of the, doing all the code and logic for, like a code mirror style thing where when you bold something, you're not just putting a star in front of it, you're actually creating like all the necessary stuff in lexicon and da 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 da. That's just a lot of work, and I am very much like an 80% sort of programmer. I am not a I leave that to the community.
Yeah, I like the fact that text is plain. I know that gets a lot of flack. I personally think it degrades extremely gracefully over multiple types of interfaces, and a lot of developers and people are like, "Oh, it's HTML, display it." And it's like, no. What if it's terminal or
Right.
something that is non, Western culture conforming views of stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm also really glad they didn't go the MIME route, where like with email you can embed any number of renders, and it gets a little complicated.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how they're going to avoid having text plus like blocked text or something with the next rev as they look to expand it. I think it's going to be tricky.
I mean everything is hard until someone
Yeah.
solves it, right?
Yep,
I do not think it
absolutely.
is I do not think it is unsolvable. I am glad that someone not named Austin gets to solve it.
I would take. Yeah. Boris, are we back enough? Should we go on to the next person?
Sure.
Was there any other questions for me or about what I was doing that
Again, amazing design. Thank you very much, Austin. Thank you for walking us through
Yeah,
that.
thanks for having me.
And I think that yeah, the other general question is like, what's next? And you talked about a bunch of those things, or how can we help? And maybe that's the thing of like, would you like someone to solve the multi-archy problem that you could just plunk in?
I mean, if you want to talk about it, I'm on the API Tetra Discord, as Austin. Feel free to like at me. I am not like this is I don't know how embedded any of you are in the like cloud native ecosystem and sort of the tech world, but like KubeCon's next week and then reInvents in a few more weeks. So my schedule is basically absolute hell until Christmas. So
Okay.
this is definitely not like my top of mind project right now.
Amazing. Thank you so
But thank
much.
you so much for having me. It was great to meet all of you and put some faces to names. I see a lot of you on the skyline, and yeah, I really like the tech community we're building over here, and I think that all of you are part of that. So keep on keeping on.
Thanks, Austin. Okay, Puria, you're up next. You should psych everyone out and just show a blog rather than a client.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi everyone. I'm Priya, as you may know by now. I'm a developer, designer. Just to give a background, I graduated from the School of Interactive Arts and Technology, if anyone's familiar with it, from SFU in Vancouver, where I studied, it's a meme, but it's a combination of art and technology, so design and development in my case. And I graduated, I think, last June or July. Yeah. And how I got into Blue Sky was that I signed up a long time ago, but I wasn't able to get in to an invitation. And I was not aware that developers could access anyway without the keys. So by the time I got in, it was, I think, around late September of last year. And then that's where I got into, learning more about ATProto, what it is, what it's like. And I submitted some PRs for the Blue Sky app, and those got merged. I think one of them did, mostly bug fixes, future improvements. Then I thought, okay, there's so many amazing people who are already contributing to the repository. And why don't I just make my own client, design it the way I want? Because there are only so many things, developers can do. Because Blue Sky, there's a really small team, and they don't have the bandwidth to do, all the requests that people are submitting through GitHub. So that's how I got started on developing Oranos. This might be a good time to share my screen. Allow for 1 month for Zoom to access my screen. Okay. Can anyone see?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is the official app. I'm gonna talk about other forks that I've been doing with Boris, but this is the main one that I am currently working on. Use Oranos.app. You can log in through app password and a username. Right now, it only connects to bluesky.social. So if you're on your own PDS, you may not be able to log in. I may change that in the near future, but I'm mostly waiting for OAuth, to be done, quote unquote, so I can add it and get it over with. But yeah, this is Oranos. Looks very similar to the Blue Sky app, pretty much. But there are some extra features. So you may have seen them mentioned on the timeline, but for those who haven't, I can probably get started with tags. So tags are basically hashtags that you add at the end of a post, and they are supported in the lexicon through Blue Sky. So I'm not really adding anything on top that doesn't already exist. It's just not supported currently. But Blue Sky on Oranos, you can add tags. For example, if you want to write something, hello, I'm posting through Oranos, and you may add a hashtag here. But if you don't want to do that, you don't want to add all the tags here and include, your main message, you can just add a tag at the end. So maybe you want to add Oranos or Blue Sky Fine tag, and you can add it, and it will show up at the end of your post, basically. So you can safely remove this. And once you submit that, if I remember correctly, it doesn't count towards your post limitations because it's not going through rich text, if I remember correctly. So that's a nice bonus. And yeah, and you can click on it, you can see, all the different posts that basically have this tag. So that's one of the features that I'm added, and I think it will probably be added in the future in Blue Sky. Another feature is that Boris really likes is inline linking. So you can find a link, you can select it, and you can have a link here. Let me just say, you can turn that link to turn that text into a link. It will just basically add a facet, and say, okay, for this string from here, this byte to that byte, this is a feature, and that feature it's a link. So you don't have to actually paste the link here, like we do normally. These are the two features that are currently in the app. But lately I've been experimenting, just passing ideas between me and Boris and a few people at ZSpace. And we were thinking about, so Blue Sky, it's only one type of collection, but there are also other types like Smoke Signal, they're doing their own. There are also other, wide range of things that were mentioned earlier. So we decided to make a fork of Oranos. We're calling it Sonaru, is Oranos backwards. It sounds Japanese, but it's not. And we changed the color, and we're hosting it somewhere else. And for each feature that we're adding, that's experimental, we're making a new URL for it. Let me just find. So we have a few, yeah. So we have frames for open frames. I'll explain that later. We have one for smoke signal. Let's just go to the smoke signal one. Yeah, smokesignal.sonaru.com. If you want to check it out, you can check it out. And quickly log in. Yeah, so this is a branch that pretty much similar to the main Oranos app. But as you can see, a little bit of things are different. So the color is different. So just to indicate that it's not Oranos. And for this fork, I added experimental support for smoke signal elements. So if you go to someone's profile, let's go to Boris's profile actually. So he has more events, I think. Yeah, so you're on this profile, you can see Boris has made some maybe posts, replies, media, he has some lists, but there's also events. And you can click on it, you can see, all the events that Boris has RSVP'd through a smoke signal. It is currently a smoke signal because the smoke signal is probably, I think, the only app that has this events functionality. And so these are the, I think, last 10. I'm limited to 10. So you can see the last 10 events that Boris has RSVP'd. And you can see from here, instead of going through a smoke signal, you can see it here, all here. And how that works is that, if I remember correctly, I check if Boris has a collection of smoke signal on his PDS. And if he does, I get a list of all the RSVP records. And those records, those are events which are created by other people in some cases. So it's not just the events that Boris has created. So you have to get the records, you have to get their keys, you have to then go to other PDSs of people who have created those events, get the event data from them, and then bring them all back here. There's probably a better way of doing it, but that's how I did it for now. So that's how you can see all the events are here. And some of them are not from Boris's. He just RSVP'd, so it's showing up here. And if you click on it, you can go to Smoke Signal, you can see the actual events. And if you're a user, you can RSVP here. I just saw Nick's reaction. Yeah, and then if you don't have an event, let's say, yeah, I think Kat doesn't have an event. Yeah, it just gives you an option. You can go to Smoke Signal. Free advertisement for Smoke Signal.
I'll take it.
Another one that I've been working on and haven't pushed it yet because there's some issues. There's open frame support. So Boris, actually, do you want to talk about open frames for a bit?
Unmuting.
Just to give an introduction.
Yeah, so frames is something that came out of the Farcaster ecosystem that is similar in many ways to ATProtocol. It's more P2P. And basically, how do you put rich content, rich interactive content into a post without necessarily having to do a lot of programming? And how do you make an ecosystem around it specifically for creators? Um, and what they decided to do was actually extend the open graph protocol that already gives you the like rich embeds today that many different creator websites already have built in. And they basically extended the open graph protocol with a few vendor specific things. It's kind of the dumbest thing that can just work. It relies on the client running a frames renderer, where if a link is posted, just like getting open graph tags, if there's extra frames tags, the client will render the content. And they've made it like it's not an iframe, it's not any of those things. It's like what will work. And the default is actually we're just going to render an image, and then you've got up to 4 buttons that you can put in. I have a static blog, not yet on ATProto, running Jekyll, and I added frames tags to my site. So if you put in any URL on my blog, it'll display a frame for anything. For anyone seeing that post anywhere else, they will actually just see the link to the website, which can be clickable like anything else. And the main thing is it's interactive. It's got it's got buttons. So those can again add extra links or do something like imagine a mini slideshow. I think this is one way that we get everything from basically I want to get the entire web upgraded to some of this stuff. And one of those ways that I can do, because OGP is already so broadly spread, the very dumbest version is just adding extra OGP tags. For fancier interactions, you could need to run a server and react differently on a per person, and there's security concerns and some other things like that. But for me, it brings all that interactivity one step closer to people.
Yeah,
And
so
there's
just
lots
to
more
give
there.
an
We can include links.
yeah, I'll show an example. And I'll share a link to the fork that has support for open frames once I manage to push it. So this is just a normal link on Oranos. It's the BMAT Consulting Borsa site here. And it's just a link, link card. Normally what you see when you share a link. Image, it's got a title. But since Boris supports open frames, and we can show that through here. So here, instead of just the normal link card where you can click and go to the page, you can see extra information that Boris has included, in the meta information that he's included on his site. So he has links to home, explore, drips. I don't know what drips is, but not going to click on it. So you can click on and go to all the different shortcuts that Boris has provided, or decided to show to the user. And so that's one example. And then another one would be my test account. Let's see. Yeah, you can play, 2048 game here. You can just click play. You can, use the buttons, to submit actions and you get the results back. So, it's going state by state. It gets updated, shows you back the result. You can have another action all on here. You don't even have to go to the website, to do this. There is a website, but you can just do it here. And there's another one for, it's just a fun one slot machine. And you can spin, you can try again. Oh, I won. That was fast. Yeah, I will show you, you want to imagine internet points. Nice. That was pretty quick. Yeah, it usually takes like 10 tries for me to get to this. Yeah, so these are the, how this works is that, for Ornis at least, so all the embeds go through this frame embed component, and they check if it has the meta information that supports open frames. And if it does, it shows it. If it doesn't, then you should fall back to what you normally see, just a link card here. So you can see it loading. Yeah, it doesn't have any, so it's just a YouTube video. They don't support open frames, so it's just a link card that you can see. Oh, another feature. This is on Orno, so you can already use it. And I think Boris mentioned it too a few days ago. So imagine you have uh, a post where it mentions an article. And if you open an article, you can see, how many people have coded this article, a post that has this article. In this case, there is one person. But what if you wanted to see everyone who's posted this link, and talked about it in some way on Blue Sky? So I added this shortcut. It's called view topic. So essentially, each embed in a post is a topic on its own. It can even be a GIF in this case. But here it's a New York Times article. So if you click on it, you can see, all the posts that have mentioned this URL, like this article, essentially. In this case, it's only one. But there are more cases where not many people have coded this post directly. They've probably got the link from somewhere else and just shared it and talked about it. And in those cases, it's very useful, just to be able to click here, and find all the references. So what this does, it's already possible with Blue Sky. What it does is to search basically the URL here and get all the references. But this is just only a shortcut for you to be able to get to it faster. Yeah, these are just some enhancements that I've made recently. And there are some other ones that haven't been added yet, but I'm working on. But if you have any ideas, I'll be happy to hear from you. Because some of these, they just came out as I worked with Boris, and other people mentioned, what's possible to do already, without adding anything, that might break in future. Yeah, and that's it for me.
Amazing. Thank you, Puria.
Great. Should I stop sharing my screen, or do you want to?
Sure, either way, we can go to discussion mode. Friska.
All right.
All right, so for the feature where you can find other topics or posts about the same link, do you do any cleaning of all the extra tracking URLs, or does it only work if someone posted the exact same URL?
It's the exact same URL. So by tracking, I'm assuming if there's a tracking added at the end of a URL.
Yeah, if there's a weird tracking parameter that doesn't
Right.
actually mean anything
That's
for the user.
that's a good edge case. Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
So to be clear, this is using a built-in Blue Sky search feature, and this is a shortcut which pastes the link into the search field and displays it. So Puria is doing interface explorations with built-in Blue Sky features.
Neat.
So some of those things can be done on the client side, like detecting a link and trimming garbage at the end and pasting that into the link. That's something that could be done for sure. And other things depend on, well, how the fuck does the Blue Sky search work?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point that you mentioned. I think it will help. Yeah, because if you share from other sources, the links may not be. Yeah, go ahead.
YouTube has started throwing this random unique ID at the end of every share link, so you can't search a YouTube video that someone's posted unless they've trimmed that off.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good edge case that I haven't thought about yet. And yeah, I'll definitely add support for that. Thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, see, I talked about it for a second and someone already made a good suggestion.
Ira, you had a comment, and then Ezra's next.
Yeah, I was just remarking that it'd be quite cool to be able to kind of, aggregate a group, just conversations around a topic instead of it kind of being all disjointed on everyone's random threads. Kind of like an instant subreddit kind of thing.
Tom already said, how did you get a hold of the front page roadmap? So if you haven't checked out front page, I don't, and I mean, it's an example again where what would front page support in Oranos look like, and leaning on that lexicon. This would be interesting. Yeah. Ezra, go for it.
I love all this like interoperability. Okay, so another thing that I have wanted for a long time is the ability, I don't know if this is possible, but with the idea of the backfeed that we were talking about earlier, I want to know whether it's possible for Blue Sky posts or AT proto posts or AT proto data, you know, um, data types in general to know when they've been referenced or embedded on the web somewhere. I doubt that you'd be able to do it if somebody just linked to it, but if you had, for example, a certain type of embed that they used, a back reference would be super useful for example, Blue Sky would be able to know all of the articles that reference a Blue Sky post, um, or something like that. I think that would be a really useful feature for a lot of different applications. Or a blog post would be able to know every time that they've been referenced, something like that. And I'm wondering if that's something that is possible, or if that's similar to something that you've done for you.
No, I haven't done that. I'm not sure if it's possible to do on the client side. I have to think about it a bit more. I
Ryan
think
and
probably
Nick,
has to do with
open discussion. So good. You guys got a take on this or another question?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. Like, I have to do this in a few different ways in BridgeFed. Like, since you get all the raw data in the fire hose, or you go backfill with Git repo, like you can kind of do anything. It's both a blessing and a curse because you got to consume the fire hose or download the whole history. It's possible. It would be a nice thing to have built in. It's lexicon specific because like what a backlink is, it depends on a lexicon. Like it's you're gonna have a ref in there somewhere, and that's lexicon specific. And so it's the kind of thing we could encourage app view builders like Blue Sky Team to add endpoints for. It adds complexity on their end because to do those efficiently, they have to build and maintain a bunch more indices, and it depends on their storage, a bunch of stuff. But it's possible.
What's a worldwide graph database between friends? I mean, really.
Man, Ted Nelson, I'm telling you.
For what it's worth, I'd really like to get backlinks into the next iteration of the Relay API so that you can subscribe to backlink streams. We'll see if that actually happens, but
go for it, Nick.
Yeah, so first of all, for those who don't know, I made Smoke Signal, and I am elated with the integration there. I think it's super cool, and I think the coolest feature about Smoke Signal is that you don't need it. So I am actively trying to develop my interface out of necessity, which is pretty fantastic to do. Really good insights and input on how to create referential information, like with backlinks and whatnot, but also as it pertains to strong linked items. It's interesting. The idea is interesting that a PDS, because the PDS initiates a lot of server-side calls like to feeds and whatnot, it could also create cached local strong reference or linked references. Like there's nothing really preventing a repository from, like at a technical level, returning the immediate information that it also uses for strongly referenced things. So that's kind of an interesting idea that I'd like to explore and create dialogue around. One of my main questions, though, is what is your take on the concept of authenticated things with frames? Because when you make a request to a labeler or to a feed generator, that's there's a certain implied authentication mechanism there. Like the bearer request is signed by the user's PDS, and the app view may not have, or signed by the user's verification method, and the app view doesn't have access to that per se. It also creates a really interesting user interface question of is every PDS a VPN, right? Is every PDS a proxy in making these authenticated calls if it's going through the PDS? So I know that there's a couple of different things there, but what are your thoughts and reactions to those questions?
So with frames, I think like this is the most experimental, and in part, I know there's a lot of other mumbling about like how do we display rich content, and I really think that something based on OGP is a very smooth path. I think the really interesting stuff, and there's a bunch of user privacy in other implementations in Farcaster. You have stuff like you can only see this slide if you follow Boris. And some of these are horrible, horrible engagement hacks, but they're also interesting and work. You know, like for me, the big question is I want a smoke signal event that has an RSVP that's in stream that works everywhere without having to hand code that in. And this is not the only way of doing it. There's lots of different ways, and we have to explore. And I think for people who are interested, we should probably have a dedicated frames discussion. I'll bring some more frames experts and bearer tokens signing. How can we up the security? Dan knows a ton of this stuff. We've literally been working towards this for fucking 5 years. Sorry for the swearing. I'm excited. This is good. And we need to play, right? And we need to have everyone from security to client developers to everyone saying how can we make this easy, fun, and safe, right? So there's a bunch of endpoints, there's a bunch of signing. I think that having authenticated stuff in there means that we can do more things, but immediately it also brings more privacy concerns because we're literally leaking a bunch of this other stuff, right? So absolutely, that's some of that in there. You may have to do that through a proxy. Some of the other communities where this is deployed said, we don't want this loading automatically, which is what Puria does right now. We want to click to interact so that we know that we only leak when we click on it, rather than a constant stream of sending third-party websites your IP address. Fair? We've got, oh, look, hands. Because of the stupid timeout, we're out of time. I have literally one off the record thing that I need Dan to be on. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Order, for presenting. Let's do a round of this is American Sign Language applause like this. So that's why we do it like this, even if we're muted. Thank you so much. And I'm going to stop recording so we can go off the record for those not on video